you own a field, you're never going to, if you don't buy any more land, you need to farm it deeper.
Yeah.
At the moment, the root zone is to about here. Yeah. You're only farming 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah. Actually, it's not too... Oh, wow.
Pepper.
Oh, that is strong.
Hey folks, we've got a special guest today. We've got the pro with us to give the farm a bit of an MOT. This is Ben, Regen Ben, who we stumbled across in a podcast, and one thing led to another. Turns out he's a bit of a neighbour because we're, 20 minutes?
But yeah, 15, yeah.
15, 20 minutes down the road. And is also like a consultant and for proper farms, not like our little patch. But we just thought we'd kind of want to see what the farm sounds like now, so we've got something to put a mark in time and see how it improves over time, hopefully. And you brought a spade.
I bought a spade.
Which is, I gather, the most important tool on a farm, didn't you say?
The most important tool on a farm, absolutely. Yes, do you want to kind of give me the lay of the land? Where?
Yeah, so...
We've got that hill field there.
Yep. It's called Hillfield, or it has a name?
Imaginative Hillfield is what we call it.
Right, okay.
Well, the previous owner called it the 5 acres, so yeah,
right.
Either or.
Hill's better.
Yeah.
Your gate goes through to another field, is that yours?
No. So that field, all of this used to belong to the same farm.
Yes.
But no, that's a huge field that next door's cows are in.
Okay, so you've got...
The gate's still there. So
this...
Flood meadows.
And there's flood meadows.
And then...
Oh, you've got both sides?
Yeah, there's 5 acres each side.
And then
no.
We've also got another strip, which is...
Another field at the end with a little lake in it. Yeah. So, might be... Yeah, I mean, we haven't grazed down there yet, but it is all year round grazing, so.
Where do you want to start digging?
Well, for one, this field up here looks like nothing grows as quick as, I mean, the hay was great off it. There was like, what was it, 580 odd bales off 5 acres, so. But it hadn't been touched in a year. Just nothing's growing back, so I'm guessing that one's quite unhealthy, whereas the flood meadows seem to just grow.
Okay, well, probably more important than that, flood meadows are silt.
Yeah.
Over many years. Possibly even beaver interaction has caused those meadows in history.
Yeah.
Here, totally different soil, and therefore during that droughted time, that probably goes 10, 12, 15 foot deep.
Yeah.
Before you hit any kind of rock.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's built up.
Lots of moisture, lots of moisture retentive soil. On here, it's probably an erodable slope.
Yeah.
So the chances are big, sand everywhere, and nowhere near. So the reason that grew back and is looking far healthier than that is probably down to soil type. But I guess you've already dug it, so you know that.
Yeah. No, is the answer to that. But I mean, it was amazing how green, all throughout that whole period, that just stayed green, pretty much. So from a farming perspective, this is probably the most useful field in that it doesn't get flooded and it doesn't, it's kind of the most normal farming type. It's probably the only one that anyone else was interested in. None of the neighbours probably were after the bottom stuff. But.
You're not going to find a lot of treasure under here the way that space.
So if you were buying a new farm or a new patch of land, you'd be digging straight away, would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should have done that when we came to visit. Have a little shovel in our
This estate agent's like, what, yeah?
Pig nut. eat them. They're plants. They're tasty.
Really?
You're going to say not unless they're roasted and salted.
Actually, it's not too... Oh, wow.
Pepper.
Oh, that is strong.
Oh, it's quite sweet, isn't it?
To
start with.
Yeah, not to end with.
That hasn't,
dries your mouth out.
that hasn't matured. Anyhow, first thing to do with soil. Is it healthy? Does it smell healthy?
Yes, to me. I think it just smells like a garden.
What smells healthy?
It doesn't smell like poo. Should it smell like poo?
No. So if it's healthy soil, it should smell sweet. What you've got to remember is plant roots. The sole purpose of plant roots is to I'll say the sole purpose. Two purposes of plant roots. First and foremost is to push out root exudates. It takes sunlight, rain, and carbon dioxide. Yeah. Make sugar. Those sugars, a lot of those sugars are pushed out of the roots. These roots all should be pushing sugar out. They feed all the biology in the soil. All of that biology then goes and forages for lots more nutrition, gives it back to the plant. The plant grows a bit more, bigger solar panel, produces more sugar, and symbiotic relationship happens between soil and plant. So if you can smell sugar, you've got a really healthy soil. If you can smell sewerage, you've got an anaerobic soil, so that's a real problem. I would have said this is a little bit earthy, but it's not that sweet.
Yeah.
Now the other thing that's really important is we talk about roots and living roots. I mean, these roots, how far are they going down into the soil? And how much are they exploring? You know, you own a field. You're never going to, you know, if you don't buy any more land, you need to farm it deeper.
Yeah.
At the moment, the root zone is to about here. Yeah. You're only farming 3 or 4 inches. Yeah. Then we have an absolute horrific pan layer.
Which is caused by?
It could be caused by a number of things. Continuous overuse by stock in the wrong conditions, water.
Yeah.
It can also be caused by chemistry of your soil. And I would have thought your chemistry of your soil is very similar to mine. And chemistry in soil is really quite important that people don't actually understand how important it is. And the 3 main elements in soil are calcium. And calcium is really important. That's something that keeps the soil open, allows drainage. You then have magnesium that does the opposite. It squeezes the soil together. That can be a real problem if you have too much. And then you have potassium, which will flatten the soil. And if you've got enough openers, and what we always say is 6 openers to 1 squeezer and 1 flattener, you've got a fairly decent friable soil.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, knowing that we're not that far away from each other, we have 0.2 openers. So we have very, very magnesium-dominated soil.
Yeah. Right.
So it wants to run together tight. We call it a 2-day soil because 2 days it's too wet, and then another 2 days later it's too dry.
Yeah.
And it bakes to concrete and that sort of thing. And basically what's happened is you've got a real problem here with this compacted layer.
Yeah. I thought you hit rock to begin with.
Yeah, I thought it was rock. Funny enough, I thought it was bedrock. We're on a slope, so erosion could have happened. But if we start chibbling away at it, we can see it is soil, but trying to get roots to penetrate into that is going to be massively problematic. And of course, we've just had a very droughted summer. And droughted summers, obviously for obvious reasons, you wonder why the grass doesn't grow. Well, probably it's growing very nicely to there, hitting a terrible layer and not extracting any moisture further down.
Depending on just that.
So there's a number of things we can do to try and get that opened up. Number one is use a mechanical means, so we could use a very low disturbance subsoiler, which will actually go and lift the ground. It doesn't do any surface cultivation at all. It just lifts it and shatters the soil, so to speak.
Yeah.
That allows these roots to go down and penetrate in.
And what depth's that?
It'd be about... I jump between metric and imperial as well. So either, foot deep, 30 centimetres, something like that, would be ideal at shattering this soil. Your other slight problem is, because obviously it's permanent pasture, that's not a bad thing, but the diversity of overgrazed pasture land has meant that if you look at that, there's a little bit of dandelion, there's a small amount of buttercup, but in terms of what we're really looking for, some of the more native species that go root at depth that would really help would be a massive thing. So if we're going to use some kind of mechanical means to allow more water extraction, it should really be in a bit of combination with perhaps, after the pigs have been through you know, lightly. I'm not talking about doing massive damage, but if they can come in and root a bit up and sprinkle a little bit of chicory seed, very, very deep rooting, which provides for everything else as well, that would be absolutely ideal. Sheep bonnet, plantain, there's lots of these things that are really useful as well for an animal's diet.
So those sort of herbal lay mixes, they contain those sort of things?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And they contain their natural anthelmintics. So there's natural wormers and gut health microbes that mean that the health of the animal, you know, let's be honest, if we were served kale every single day, we get rather tired of it. It's the same with a lot of animals and sheep. If you can give them a bit of diversity, it's really essential. But diversity massively helps in the soil too. The other thing you could do is a chemical amendment. And as soon as you mention the word chemical, everyone goes quite berserk. And when I'm talking about chemical, I'm not talking about an agrochemical or pesticide. I'm talking about actually adding calcium.
Okay.
So one thing, of course, we can do is add calcium. Now, we don't know the pH of this, so we don't know whether it might need calcium carbonate, which could change the pH of it. But I only use calcium carbonate as a very quick, short fix. Because the chances are, if you've got a pH problem and it's gone running to acid on these types of soil, it generally means you've got compacted soil. It goes anaerobic through winter, so it stays totally wet. And then what happens then is you create sulfides and things like that because of all the anaerobic bacteria.
Yeah.
All the sulfides that are being created actually create acidity.
Okay.
So one way a salesman might come and say you need lime every year, whereas actually let's undo the root cause of the problem, which is actually you've got waterlogged soils because of a compacted layer. Let's take the compaction out, and therefore in actual fact we can solve that.
My little bit of research about like kind of the flood meadows and stuff and why there's loads of buttercup, and a lot of people are saying, oh, you put lime down. So that could be the same down there as well.
Yeah. This is the problem. Everybody assumes that buttercups are associated with pH.
Yeah.
It's associated with wet and waterlogged soils.
Right. Okay.
Wet and waterlogged soils are creating a pH problem.
Yeah. What
they're trying to do is punch through that and repair, believe it or not.
Okay.
So that's most of the problem. So there's products like calcium carbonate, lime that could alter your pH.
Yeah.
Or you could use calcium sulfate, recycled plasterboard, some gypsum.
Yeah.
That's really quite useful because the calcium obviously helps open the soil, and the actual sulfur will bind with your magnesium and strip some of the magnesium out of the soil as well, as magnesium sulfate. So in actual fact, it sort of has a two-edge attack. So that's rather quite useful.
So all of that would actually physically change that hardness over time?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, both will. Of course, the other important thing is organic matter. Now, this would be quite high in organic matter because it hasn't been disturbed that often and that sort of thing. The thing about organic matter is you can have an awful lot of organic matter doing nothing, and we call it carbon choke, almost. It's where all your soil microbes want to live and that sort of thing. If you haven't got any soil microbes living in there, it kind of isn't doing anything. What you really need is your organic matter cycling nutrients.
Yeah.
So if you fill it with biology and fill it with organic matter that's actually cycling, the soil becomes, it's a bit like a flywheel, and all of a sudden it becomes far more productive and far better. So give a place for the microbes to live by doing a little bit of soil remedial work, and funny enough, you'll see more production coming into your land. 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen.
Yeah.
Our soils are full of things that will convert that atmospheric nitrogen to plant-available nitrogen. We're far better off trying to use and utilise those on a world scale. This isn't just here, to actually make our grass grow. And it's generally down to the soil because so many people lacking spades and things like that, as in going and having a look at the problems they got. It's far easier to sit in an office or around your kitchen table and just bung a bit more nitrogen on.
Yeah.
But it's getting more expensive, so that's a good thing.
And more people getting their spades out now then?
Yeah, more and more people are starting to realise that actually, you know, as a farmer like yourselves, you own some land. It's odd that you don't actually look at it.
Yeah. So why should we be seeing worms?
In an ideal way, I would suggest the worms up here. It's so dry.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect environment for your worm.
Okay. So it's not a problem that we're
It's not a problem. I would like to, you know, if we came back in November and it's wet and there were no worms, and let's be honest, with a compaction layer only 4 inches deep, you're not going to have a huge amount of worms.
Tough worms, yeah.
So yeah, it's a 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. Well, something to work.
And you've also got to imagine with cattle, there's a lot of wormers fed to cattle. Wormers are horrific for our soil biology as well. So what happens is you have all this breaking down, all this grass, all this feg you can see now. Now this should be eaten by all our soil biology and recycled into organic matter. Well, what it does is it slowly rots down and stays there, whereas this should be cycling back more nutrients to the next animal, all killed by wormers and fly sprays and things like that.
Yeah. So that was an interesting one, your comment when we came to yours on fly sprays.
Yes.
I mean, I knew about wormers having a problem with worms in the soil. But so explain the fly spray, like if you're using spray on or pour on.
Okay, yeah, so it's a real problem, fly spray. I mean, flies and maggots, especially in sheep, as I'm sure you're aware, fly strike as they call it, is a real problem. I mean, we've bred sheep historically now to keep wool on, because wool was so valuable. Funny enough that we're now breeding them off, but that's another story. But with this unnatural amount of wool that's taken on by sheep, it's a perfect environment for flies to lay eggs and ultimately maggots, and that's how they've actually evolved with sheep doing that. And we use various things to actually provide protection against these flies. And it's important because for obvious reasons it's a welfare issue if you have maggots growing in the back of your sheep, and eventually it will kill them, and it's a very slow and painful death. So what people do is put these fly spray on, and they're very persistent, as I said, 18 weeks control, click, and various other things. Perhaps shouldn't mention brands, should I? But there are things that will give up to 18 weeks control. Yeah. Highly potent. And what happens with these fly sprays, they obviously, you spray them on the outside, they work their way into the body and eventually into the intestine of the animal. Yeah. They mix with the excrement of the animal, and when they get excreted onto the floor, what would normally happen is our dung beetles, and we have many species of dung beetles in the UK that should break down manure at all times and rather quite quickly. Unfortunately, they're very sensitive to these fly sprays. So the first thing that happens is, unfortunately, they die. The only thing, believe it or not, that can actually survive the excrement with a small amount of fly spray are flies. So the flies come along and lay all their eggs in the excrement on the floor, breed more maggots and more flies. So ultimately, if you use fly spray, you will breed more flies.
There you go.
It's crazy.
It's
crazy.
Yeah.
Let's go and have a look under your hedge, just not 20 metres away, and we'll see what the soil looks like under there, which is less disturbed than out here and less poached.
On a slightly different topic, because we've got to fence these two sides of the field. Yeah. When we came to yours, you had basically two approaches. One was put the stock fence up tight and let goats and sheep help with managing that. Yeah. Or set it well away and have a nice corridor all the way along.
That's right.
If it's, I mean, this field's a little bit bigger, but where we've got very thin, narrow fields, we don't really want to be leaving 6 metres.
Exactly.
Are we, in your view, what are we better?
Yeah, I'd put them tight to the hedge and use the. You haven't got any goats yet, have you?
Not yet, but we're ready.
It's a good reason for Tim to get them.
We're ready for flirting.
That sounds cool. So instantly you notice on the hedge side, when we get here, we got diversity. We've got longer grass. We've got some stinging nettles, which are indicative of nitrate, which means it's going to be fairly fertile here. We have annual nettles, we have a few buttercups, and we have various other things. And what we'll do, we'll just take a spadeful out here and just see what... And as you can see, the spade goes in
easier.
a lot
further.
A lot further.
See, I'm learning.
Soil's a much nicer colour. I've actually hit a root there, but let's have a look at this.
after truffles.
Very earthy.
Yeah, it smells like a proper garden.
And you can see how we're not pulling up. It's not actually that sweet. It smells more like like you say, a vegetable garden. But you can see how it's all so much more friable at depth.
Yeah.
Microbes are going to love living in that. The aggregation of the soil. Look at the size of some of these roots punching down.
Yeah.
And that's what you'll get when you turn a herbal lay upside down.
You actually get all the
different
root veg in there, I guess.
Look, that smells very strong.
Oh wow. Smell that. Smells like a food stuff.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't moved, what, 20 metres? Yeah. It just goes to show what the soil can do. Colour difference as well, much deeper, darker brown. Yeah.
So, I mean, from a geology point of view, i.e. hundreds of years ago, it's still the same soil. It's just how it's been used
managed.
and managed.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're trying to recreate to a point as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Organic matter that's actually working. And once it starts working, it will actually produce way more biomass because it's in its best interests. If you're a microbe and you want to breed, you need enough food for your offspring. Yeah. So in actual fact, if we can get a plant to grow, to give you more feed, to give to your offspring, well, that's a good thing. So it's in everybody's interest that plants grow and grow rapidly.
Yeah. Taking like a traditional grass pasture to that state, I mean, how are we talking like big machine type work to get, or like if you were turning this into more of a herbal lay? Yeah. Can that be overseeded, or is it more a case of?
You've got to be careful though. You've got to be careful with overseeding. The relationship, believe it or not, between this grass, the grass roots, and the soil is incredibly strong. And you also have to look at the rest of nature, of how nature actually regenerates itself. And there's nothing that really overseeds that well and that's successful. If you really want to change something, what you see is wildebeest or in Africa or buffalo in the American plains doing quite a lot of hoof damage.
Yeah.
You know, and actually tearing and making a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
And that's when all the seeds that have fallen onto the soil surface over tens, hundreds of years have that opportunity then to germinate and go. Which is why I suggested the pigs could be a perfect opportunity. Yeah. You know, let your pigs across it. Don't let them turn it up to the point of making pigs, like any animal, it's down to our management whether they do really good things or really bad things. And if we leave them too long in the same place, they'll start doing really bad things. It's not their fault, we've kept them in that area. If we allow them to do what we want them to do, you can then go and, like you say, sprinkle some seeds, so be the hand of nature, and allow those to grow and do exactly what they are, give them the opportunity.
Nettles under the tree line, is it not an urban myth, a rural myth that's caused by the fact that sheep are always under there? Or is that something else? What causes?
Well, yes. So nettles are an indication of high nitrogen. Okay. Okay, so the sheep gather under there, excrement under there, live under there when it's horrible. Funny enough, there's far more nitrogen under there than there is in the rest of the field. So it is caused by sheep, but not directly by sheep, by the fact that they're looking for some shelter.
Yeah.
Oh, you go thistles well as well?
Yeah, quite a lot along this side.
I think we'll find a bit of a difference here.
Well, I'm afraid you're going to have to wait until next week for the next little install of our farm audit with Ben. Ben is just one of those people who is just passionate and it just rubs off straight away. He showed us around his farm to start with, and then he came and spent this time with us, and none of this was anything to do with YouTube. He didn't even know about the channel until he showed up on our doorstep and we started chatting through things, and we decided to film it. We filmed over an hour and a half of content, and it's just so much information in there. We released it on the Patreon area for about a year ago probably, and shared it as one full length piece. But what we're going to do now is break it down. You can head over there if you want to. I'll put the information down in the description. But if you want to wait, we will try and kind of put out these smaller bits, and it's just fascinating, all this stuff that goes on below our feet all the time that we don't even think about, but actually it makes so much sense. It's all just common sense farming, I guess. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. I know I did, and it won't be long before we can share the next bit, and we're going to be taking a look at why these flood meadows are so drastically different from those hill fields, and then hedge talk, verges. There's just an endless amount of information, so can't wait to share all that with you. Thanks to Ben. I'll put his info down in the description. There's a proper outro and bit more of an interview type thing in one of the future videos, but for now I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. Take care, guys, and we'll see you next time.